Hello, college football fans. Welcome back to the newest college football talk show, Saturdays over Sunday. I'm your co-host, Ben Gorowitz, now with my partner, Max Greenberg. Today's date is September 28th, 2018. Let's get the show on the road, Max.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I'm going to start off this week with my big story. My big story this year is the new coaches that have come into college football this year. 18 new coaches were hired coming into this season and have not gone off to a very fast start, you could say. They are off to a 14-41 overall record through 4 weeks. And to boil it down a little more, 4-23 record versus Power 5 opponents. Now, all 4 of those wins versus Power 5 opponents came against other first-year coaches. And if you look at those numbers, I mean, I guess looking at these records, they're not good. I mean, none of these coaches have really had extreme success. There's a ton of coaches around the country that have got new coaches. Some of the new ones are Willie Taggart in Florida State, Scott Frost in Nebraska, Kevin Sumlin in Arizona, Chip Kelly at UCLA. There's so many more, like Herm Edwards, Arizona State, such a big coach, such a big name. But overall, no one has really done anything special with their program. It almost seems like, I know it's early, but these coaches, not on the hot seat, but they're on like, what did we do here?
Herm has been off to the best start. No one's expecting much. He's been out of the game of football for a long time now. He's played some teams close. He beat Michigan State, and he almost just beat Washington this past week.
No, he's definitely done the best. I mean, one of the names that really, really pops out to me is Willie Taggart, the hire out of Oregon to go down to Florida State to replace the Jimbo Fisher era. They were high on him. They were excited to have him in, but he's off to a slow 2-2 start with 2 awful losses.
That offensive line is awful.
The offense just doesn't look there. He doesn't have the energy. The fans are just not ready. Nothing seems right down there. And obviously, everyone knows about the whole Scott Frost situation where turned around an 0-12 team to go to 12-0 in 1 year at UCF, and now he's hired at his alma mater at Nebraska, where he won a national championship as a player, and is off to a 0-3 start.
But his quarterback that he chose is hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska fans are going to have to be patient with Scott Frost. If you remember, he came on the job pretty late because he decided to coach UCF in the bowl game against Auburn.
Correct.
So he got off to a little sluggish, a little slow start on the recruiting trail. My message to Nebraska fans, be patient with him. They're going to give him time.
Give it 3 or 4 years. You got to get your own recruiting in there. Like you said, he had trouble recruiting with the timing and all that stuff, but once he gets out there and really takes over this program and moves on from the last wave and it becomes his program, we can really see what it does. But I think at this point, stay calm. There's nothing really you can do, obviously. And I mean,
yeah, the Sumlin Arizona hire, I don't know if he was the best name for them out there. Sumlin has had success in college football, but he hasn't.
No, yeah.
I don't know if he really lived up to total expectations.
Right, going back to that hire, it was almost impulsive. Like, it was a big name that came out of an SEC school, and like, oh, let's go grab him before anything else happens. Let's just get this done. Let's get him in there. And I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think that's the best hire in the world. I don't think it's the worst hire in the world. But at the end of the day, like you say, he has no accolades of anything that special if you think about it. Like, he had a big program where the stadium was expanded. He had Johnny Manziel. I guess that's what
beat Alabama.
Yeah, he beat Alabama once. That is an accolade. But at the end of the day,
he never won the SEC.
He didn't win anything.
To the next hire, UCLA Chip Kelly. I was really excited about this one.
I was too.
I'm a big advocate. I do like watching Chip Kelly style football. It was some of the most exciting football when he was at Oregon. And he had Mariota and DeAnthony Thomas. He had all that speed. It was really surprising to see him pick Wilson Speight, the transfer from Michigan, as a starting quarterback. He is not a player that fits Chip Kelly.
That's not. It's the
opposite. He can't move. And with him getting hurt, now he's playing the true freshman Robinson. It's not clicking so far, and it's getting into some troubled water. The true freshman's quarterback is blaming Chip Kelly for some of the play calls that they've had. It's ugly. But I think Chip Kelly's at the right school for him to be successful in this day and age. I think that he can bring UCLA the West Coast style football back. I like that hire. I just think that, I was not expecting 0-3.
Absolutely, I know. And if there's any time to come into the Pac-12, it's now. Because if you think of the Pac-12, you think of Washington. And I guess USC. USC has the brand, but they're not anything right now. They don't do anything. But, I mean, at the end of the day, Oregon's playing well, yes. There are some great, like Stanford is, yes. But, I mean, there's always going to be great teams in these Power 5 conferences. But overall,
Chip Kelly should be able to recruit in the West.
Absolutely.
Being, at Oregon for all those years.
He was at Oregon, correct. Like, it's a change, but it's not a change. He's in LA now. Like,
I think Scott Frost deserves more patience than Chip Kelly does, but I'd say give Chip, my personal opinion, Chip Kelly deserves, of course he deserves 4 years. Every coach should get 4 years, so you get a whole recruiting class cycle. Chip
Correct.
Kelly should get 4 to 5. Scott Frost should get plus for me, 5+.
Right. When it seemed like more than a hire when he was brought in there. All right.
Let's move on to a big storyline in college football out of Clemson, South Carolina. Of course, we are talking about Kelly Bryant transferring. Kelly Bryant was the starting quarterback to start the season, but we all knew that highly talented true freshman Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 or number 2 quarterback at a high school, whichever website you look at, he was coming in right on Kelly Bryant's tail.
There was no guarantee that Trevor Lawrence was coming in and starting. We all knew Kelly Bryant was going to start, but just like you said, based off of this sil set that Trevor Lawrence has, you could kind of tell there was going to be a point where where Kelly Bryant could lose his job, but not just because Trevor Lawrence is better, but because the way Kelly Bryant can play, because he is a very good quarterback, but he can also restrict your playbook a lot, and it's something that we see around the country nowadays. And I don't know about the whole transferring decision.
Well, so his whole point, Kelly Bryant's side of it is that he didn't get a fair chance.
But we're in week 5 now.
I don't agree with that.
No, if you look week 2, they traveled down to A&M. Were neck and neck with them all game, ended up winning. But Kelly Bryant won that game. Took over on the road in one of the hardest places to play in the entire country.
Yeah, and I think if Trevor Lawrence would have played the majority of that game, I think A&M would come out on top. So props to Kelly Bryant and Dabo for going with Kelly Bryant in that situation, because I think that was the right call. But for the rest of the season, I agree with what Paul Feinbaum has been saying this whole time, that Clemson can't waste this year.
Oh,
They have
no.
the best defensive line in football. Again, they're back.
Right.
They have
Maybe the best ever.
They have athleticism through the roof at receiver. They need to go with Trevor Lawrence. That's what Dabo just decided to do. I agree with that. I do think Kelly Bryant got his chance, and I think Dabo's making the right decision. I feel bad for Kelly Bryant.
Right.
But at least Dabo gave him a chance with the new redshirt rule
Correct.
for him to play.
And I did notice yesterday, Kirk Herbstreit made a comment on this situation. He said that it sucks, but if you look around the country, like this specific situation, also down in Alabama with the Jalen Hurts Tua situation, but if in the new age of football, it's kind of here, like I mentioned in the last episode.
You play your best players.
You play your best players at right as you need them, and you regardless of what age, because if you can play, you can play. And the new era of quarterback, especially in college football now, is you can't just be back there and manage a game.
No.
Everything is changing. Everything's getting so much faster. But if you look at this Clemson schedule, other than that A&M game, I don't understand where Dabo could have made the decision. I get it based off of skill, because they played Furman at home, blowout. Had Georgia Southern at home, blowout. At Georgia Tech, blowout. I mean, nothing really there that could challenge them. Not like the rest of the schedule could. But I do understand the decision, and I don't think Dabo was expecting Kelly Bryant to react like that. But he did. He's gone. And, I mean, there are some names coming up of possible landing spots. I've heard a bunch in the SEC. I've heard Florida. I've heard Auburn. I've heard Arkansas.
Tennessee.
Tennessee's possible. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule for the rest of the year is not too tough for Clemson. They're playing 4-0 Syracuse, which we'll get into a little bit later on in the podcast. But they're at home. NC State is a program that can surprise a couple teams, but Clemson is too good to lose to a team like that. They play at Florida State. Florida State has looked... That should be a blowout, the way Florida State's looked.
No worries.
Louisville, they haven't looked good since the Alabama game. The toughest schedule that a lot of people think will be at Boston College. Now, Boston College might be, top 5 running back in the country, A.J. Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be their test. And then, of course, they play in the rivalry game against South Carolina this year, but that's in Clemson. So their 2 hardest games left, I'd say, are at Boston College and South Carolina. But with Trevor Lawrence at the helm, Clemson should be undefeated.
They've got athletes everywhere. They got receivers. They got running backs. They've got everything. All right, next we'll talk about Ben's big story.
Yeah, my big story, I'm going to talk about 3 different teams. I'm going to start with Oklahoma. They were number 5 in the country last week. They dropped back 1 to number 6 now. LSU jumped. They won 28-21 against Army last week. Now, if you look at this in the sense of, wow, Oklahoma, they have so much talent. They barely beat a team like Army. You're looking at this wrong. The way I look at they played a program in Army who runs the triple option.
Correct.
Now, if you run a triple option, there's a couple things you have to do successful in a game to win. You have to control the possession, the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Army did that. Oklahoma had the ball for 15 minutes total of that game. Okay? That's not that much time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get, on third down, you got to get 3rd and 4 or shorter so that you're not in an obvious pass situation.
Third and manageable. You got to be
third and manageable, because those teams run the ball the best. They throw the ball. That's not what they don't throw the ball exceptionally well. That's why they run the triple option. And Army did that. Now, if you go back into the game and you look at some stats, well, Kyler Murray did not play a bad game. He was 11 of 15, 3 touchdowns, a pick, and 165 yards. He just didn't have the ball enough. So when Oklahoma had the ball, they were moving, they were scoring. It's just their defense couldn't get them off the field. Army did everything that they needed to do to win that game, but talent took over eventually. I don't look at Oklahoma as Oklahoma is still one of the most talented offensive teams in the country.
No,
they're fine.
There's a reason Kyler Murray is still top 3 on the Heisman, regardless of how they played.
Yeah, they're fine. Playing, like I said, playing a triple option is never easy, especially when you don't see it that often. So Oklahoma, in the words of Aaron Rodgers, relax. You're fine. My next team I'm going to talk about is Kentucky. Mark Stoops in Lexington is 4-0. He's had some pretty good wins so far. The schedule's going to get tougher.
It will. It's the SEC.
Yeah, they're on pace to become first or second in the SEC right now. And they do get Georgia at home. Although Kentucky, Benny Snell Jr. he's great. I mean, if you can hand the ball off to him and let him run,
mm-hmm.
They're going to win games.
Right, he put up all 4 touchdowns against Mississippi State last week.
I'm not sold on their quarterback, Wilson, just yet. Mississippi State does have a very good defense, and he played well. But like you just said, they relied on Benny Snell. Even though they have Georgia at home, I don't see Kentucky winning the SEC East. But props to Mark Stoops. He's done a phenomenal job in his years there. He gets better every single year.
Yeah,
they're talented.
I wouldn't say the next 4 or 5 weeks are a gauntlet in any way. I mean, they have South Carolina at home this week. Going to A&M is tough just because it's going to A&M, and then Vanderbilt at home at Missouri, and then they bring in Georgia. So, I mean, they are tough games. I could see them going 3-2, 2-3, 4-1, 1-4. I don't know. But Kentucky, yeah, they're a very good team, and they're proving it. I mean, they're out there smashing mouth football. They're not out there just kind of just winning games like they're not supposed to. They're going out there like they're supposed to be winning these games.
Right. And my next big headline is, close your ears, Hokie fans, Virginia Tech. They just lost to Old Dominion last week at Old Dominion. Now, yes, their starting quarterback, Josh Jackson, got hurt. Unfortunately, it looked bad. I hope he can get better soon. But even with losing your starting quarterback, a talented team, a talented program like Virginia Tech should be able to beat an Old Dominion.
Oh, absolutely. At home, right? Or was it at Old Dominion?
But I'm gonna say, what does this look for the ACC? So they're not on Clemson's side. So assuming Clemson does win their side, which they should, Virginia Tech, they're 2-1 right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're 1-0 in their conference, but that's the team that people picked, them in Miami, to challenge Clemson in the ACC championship. Well, Miami has a little quarterback controversy. Their backup's been splitting reps in practice, so Malik Rozier needs to start playing well to keep his job from Mark Richt. But that's a bad loss for Virginia Tech. And it's a real bad loss that Josh Jackson is now hurt, their talented quarterback. So it's going to be interesting for the rest of the year to see how the ACC Coastal Division plays out. Right now, Virginia is 3-1, winning the division.
3-1.
3-1. If Virginia plays Clemson in the ACC championship game, it's going to be ugly. Just
it will be ugly.
Yeah.
This is a very unbalanced conference. Not in anyone's fault, but like Clemson, they have a cakewalk. Unless they do something stupid like they have the last 2 years where they go and lose that one weird game, there is not a chance anyone's going to stay up with them in the ACC.
Yeah, the ACC is going to be real interesting to watch from now on, especially if Josh Jackson can't come back. I'd say Miami is now the favorite. Even with Duke being 4-0, Virginia being 3-1, Miami still should be the favorite talent-wise.
Yeah, we'll see what Virginia can do. I mean, that's a bad loss, a bad injury. But, they're in the ACC. They have a tough schedule coming up. They're not going to back down anything. It's not how it works. But I do think they're going to be okay. You want to pick some games?
Let's do it. Let's get right into the pick'em. Of course, just like last week, we're going to start with the top 5 teams in the country. And then we will give you 10 to 11 other games, big matchups this week. Week 5, this is an interesting week. A lot of big matchups.
Big ranked matchups.
Let's start with number 1 Alabama. They're at home against Louisiana Lafayette.
Noon kickoff, 11 a.m. down
Central
in Tuscaloosa.
It's 48.5.
48.5 point spread. It started off as 53.5, which I don't think I've ever seen anything that high in my life. But I don't even think we need to talk about this. Alabama's Alabama. They're going to roll. It doesn't matter. And
You're picking Alabama?
Yeah, picking Alabama.
I'm also picking Alabama.
Stay healthy.
To follow on what Saban said in the press conference, he asked for the media to say, to write about negative things. I'll grant Saban's wish. I think the one area of concern for when Alabama starts getting into the heat of their schedules, I'd say special teams, but specifically punting.
Right.
They lost a cannon of a leg in J.K. Scott.
Cannon.
And there's nothing wrong with Skylar DeLong, who's a true freshman right now. Saban says his confidence just needs to get up because he kicks it well in practice. My whole point is when they start playing the good teams on the road, even at home, doesn't matter. If you can't flip field position, if you're going to give someone a short field, teams like LSU,
absolutely,
Auburn.
And no one talks about this because Alabama, yet everyone's like, oh, Alabama's Alabama, they're going to beat you with their talent. But at the end of the day, if you really look at Alabama football games, how they beat you is if you won't get past your own 30-yard line. And that's how they beat you.
Yeah, J.K. Scott used to pin teams back and let the defense just go at them.
60 yards on the fly, 5 seconds in the air inside the 10-yard line.
Yeah, like I said, there's nothing wrong with Skylar DeLong.
No.
Skylar DeLong, he had 2 great punts last week. He also had a 13-yarder.
Yeah,
I'm just saying when the schedule gets a little tougher,
it's a big deal.
If you can't punt the ball 15 yards,
Absolutely.
13 yards.
No, good teams will take advantage of that. One last thought for Alabama. They're almost fully healthy again with a offensive lineman coming back this week. So that maybe see if he'll get to play this game because it does work out to be perfect. It's a little bit of a cupcake, so maybe he'll get re-put into that offensive line. All right.
Yeah. Let's move on to number 2, Georgia. They're playing in Athens against Tennessee. I will actually be at that game this week. This is an interesting matchup, SEC East rivalry.
Georgia's good, but this game's always good.
It won't be this year.
It won't be this year. That's what I was getting at, but Tennessee is a train wreck. I'm sorry.
Pruitt needs time.
It's not
Pruitt knows what he's doing.
It's just
I don't think he has his quarterback.
No, he does not.
Right now,
he has nothing he wants right now.
It's a 31-point spread.
I'm taking Georgia big, and I don't think they're going to have any problem. This game could be over early. They won't. Tennessee cannot keep up with the physicality. They can't keep up with the speed, and the 2 quarterbacks at Georgia, will just rip you apart.
Yeah, and last week Georgia played at Missouri. The start of the game, more in the first quarter, Jake Fromm looked a little. I don't want to use the word nervous, but he wasn't himself. Georgia got off to a really sluggish start. I don't see that happening against Tennessee. I think Jake Fromm gets back in rhythm.
No, they don't do that 2 weeks in a row, and then at home against the SEC East rival. That won't happen.
You got the Dogs?
I got the Dogs big.
So do I. Next up, number 3, Clemson. We talked about this a little bit earlier. This will be Trevor Lawrence's first official start. They have 4-0 Syracuse coming into town.
Don't let that 4-0 trick you.
Yeah, and Trevor Lawrence, the offense has been efficient with him. They look comfortable with him throwing the ball.
The team just seems to, I don't want to say like him better, but just play around.
They go with his playing style
him,
better.
Right. Him in the cuddle.
I think that's fair to say.
Right.
I have Clemson in this game. They're a 25.5-point favorite. maybe they get off. I don't even think they get off to a sluggish start.
No, I mean Clemson 3 or 4
Trevor
touchdowns.
Lawrence has been playing.
Right, and and believe me, he's excited about this. This is big for him.
Yeah, Dabo will take care of business. I think his defense does. I think they will help out the offense in this game. Dabo has the luxury of relying on that defense this year. That defensive line is unblockable.
All 4 projected first rounders. Never heard of that before.
Yeah, I got Clemson.
I'm going to go Clemson by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Moving on to number 4, one of the biggest matchups of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4, Ohio State going at Penn State.
Happy Valley, whiteout.
Number 9, Penn State is home.
Prime time, ABC, whiteout, Happy Valley. This one's going to be good.
Yeah, the game's at 6:30. Urban Meyer's back.
Urban Meyer's back. This is the second game back.
Second game back, but, this is an interesting matchup.
Very interesting. No Joey Bosa.
I have said that I don't think Trace McSorley is as good as people thought he was last year. This is going to be a big test for him. Dwayne Haskins on the other side of the ball for Ohio State has...
Gunslinger, absolute gunslinger.
I mean, he's proved to anyone who had doubts about him coming into this year. He's playing great. Ohio State's got a 2-headed monster running back.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Weber Jr. and J.K. Dobbins are both big, physical, fast runners.
They'll get to the edge. They'll get you in the trenches. They'll get you anywhere.
But it's at Penn State. The whiteout is tough. James Franklin is tough. It is hard to play there.
Oh, very hard. Very, very hard.
It's going to be loud. Who do you got in this one?
I'm going to take Ohio State. I know they're down Joey Bosa. I know that's a big part of their team.
Nick Bosa.
Nick Bosa, I'm sorry, yes. Nick Bosa is out until at least November. But like you said, I don't see Penn State offense moving very well overall against this Ohio State team. I mean, like you said, they sling the ball. They can run the ball. They have great defense.
Ohio State can do everything.
They can do everything. And I truly think, nothing against anyone else, I could see them as a top 3 team in the country, to be honest. I know that those 3 teams are there. There's a very solidified
There's not much
4.
separation.
There's not.
Between the top 4 right now.
There's not. And you know what? Clemson, Ohio State would be a great game, and we're not talking about that. But Ohio State at Penn State. I mean, that's a big-time Big Ten matchup. That is a big-time, prime-time area to play. That's just a big, big game. Is that where game day is? I'm sure it is. I'm not sure. But I'm going to take Ohio State by 6.
Nick Bosa being out does hurt the defense. He's a stud.
Oh.
He has a sack in, I think, 6 games in a row. That's impressive.
Very impressive.
I'm also picking Ohio State. I think Urban Meyer's a really good coach. I don't always agree with his personal matters, but
when it comes down
as a
to football,
coach, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with James Franklin. James Franklin, I think, is a very good coach. I'm picking the Buckeyes. I think Urban Meyer, he has too much talent.
Yeah, and this is his first game really prepping since he got back. Second game back overall, but his first game to really prep and get this team going. And I think the team's excited to have him back for a big game. It's just to go into that stadium walking together as one again. It's going to be big for us, and I think they win.
Game day is there, by the way.
Okay.
Number 5, it's LSU. They're home against Ole Miss this week.
Look out for this one.
You think?
I think so. Honestly. LSU, yes, is a good team. They're number 5 for a reason. They've had 2 top 10 wins, you could say, I guess.
They're only an 11.5-point favorite.
No. LSU's offense is not that great if you really look at them. Joe Burrow, yes, can throw the ball, but he had a good game against Miami open season. But overall, they don't really play.
Game manager.
They're a manager. That's an Edo kind of player. But, I mean, on the other side, Ole Miss, Jake Atam, we talked about this. They have Te'amu. Unbelievable arm.
He can sling it.
3 unbelievable receivers who are NFL ready.
Yep.
And
Wilkins, the running back.
Absolutely. They caught Alabama off guard on the first play. That was it. But at the end of the day, they can do that against a better team, or a team not as good as Alabama, like LSU. I know it's at LSU, and that's tough to play. But they're going to be slinging the ball. They were hitting a bunch of plays over the linebackers in the flats and the star position against Alabama consistently. And I don't know if LSU can consistently stop that.
Who are you picking?
I'm going to take LSU very close by 2 or 3, similar to the Auburn game. Because I do think Ole Miss is going to show up. Their defense is there, and
their defense is bad. Ole Miss,
right?
It's awful.
Right. I meant as in not there.
Oh yeah.
They're not there. They don't exist.
Yeah.
But we'll see what Joe Burrow can do again. This is a great timing game for Joe Burrow. To be really honest, it's an SEC huge matchup. The crowd will be there, but it's another game where he can really develop as a quarterback again in their system. Because he still doesn't really know it. He was there 3 weeks before the season even started.
I'm going with the Tigers
Okay.
in this game.
Close.
Close-ish.
Like-
I think fourth quarter,
Okay.
LSU starts to wear them down.
But like a typical SEC game throughout.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if this game was in Oxford, Mississippi, I think they would have more of a chance.
Oh, absolutely.
Night games in LSU,
Almost unbeatable.
yeah, that's LSU's middle name. So I'm rolling with the Tigers.
Death Valley at night.
A couple of big matchups throughout the week is number 7 Stanford traveling to number 8 Notre Dame.
That's a big one. This is the first top 10 matchup in Notre Dame since 2005.
That's big.
Very big. You know that stadium's going to show out.
Stadium will be there. I've been to that stadium. It gets rocking.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame played a different quarterback last week.
They did.
So whether they go with one guy or both guys,
Was that against Vanderbilt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to go with one or two guys this week. That'll be interesting. Kelly, a lot of people think Notre Dame's got a good chance to go undefeated if they get past this game.
This is a big, big, big game for them, obviously.
Do
based
they
on the
get
rankings.
past? Do they win this game, Max?
No. Stanford goes into Notre Dame and wins this game.
I picked Stanford last week, and they won.
They did.
They didn't outplay Oregon, but they won.
Right. They're on the road again.
I'm going with Notre Dame.
All right.
Notre Dame's kicker, Justin Yoon, is a senior. He's gonna win this game.
I just don't. There's no bad pick. I think either this game it should be down to the last second, but like you said, it can come down to kicking. It can come down to field position. I mean, everything is so different.
Notre Dame's kicker almost won the game when Georgia went there last year. I think
Exactly.
it's a very similar type game, very physical. I think Notre Dame pulls this one out.
Notre Dame will be ready. They know how to deal with the big games, regardless of how good or bad they are. They know how to deal with this. So I'm going to take Stanford. I know Notre Dame will be prepared, but Stanford is going to go in there and get the W. Back-to-back road wins.
All right,
Top 25 wins.
I'm taking the Irish.
All right, let's move on to the next one. 12 West Virginia travels to 25 Texas Tech. Now, both of these offenses, I'm sure you could imagine, are averaging well over 500 yards per game.
They're lethal.
West Virginia averages about 550. Texas Tech averages about 630 yards per game. This is high flying.
Cliff Kingsbury's teams have always been able to put up a lot of yards, points. Normally, they can't play defense. And they're going against a Heisman candidate, Will Grier, a top wide receiver in the country in Stills.
This is a tough one. This is another very interesting because of just the dynamic of it. Like I said, these offenses are just ridiculous.
For me, Texas Tech gets this done for me. I'm picking the Red Raiders. That's my upset pick of the week.
I'll take.
They're going to get a stops.
I'm gonna take
They are
Texas
going
Tech.
to get a couple stops, I
think they will
believe.
too. West Virginia, yes, they put up numbers, but if you really watch them, which I actually did last week, they have troubles on offense. They really do because they could rattle off 3 straight plays and all of a sudden not move the ball for 10 minutes because that's just how they work. But they put up so many points because they roll on and they get these huge chunk plays.
Will Grier can chuck it.
Oh, absolutely, he can chuck it. When he played down at Florida, he could chuck it, and then went down to West Virginia, and continued to chuck it. And that's why he's a Heisman favorite. We'll see.
The next game is number 19 Oregon going at number 24 Cal. Cal is undefeated right now. Oregon actually moved up a spot after their loss last week.
Right. Oregon lost last week at home on a comeback versus Stanford. They're coming off that loss, going on the road against an undefeated Cal team. Cal is ranked 24, but if you really look deep down in their stats are not extremely impressive.
Well, they've relied on their defense.
Exactly.
They've won the turnover battle in every game so far. That's got to play a factor in why they're still undefeated.
Absolutely.
I'm picking Oregon.
I'm going to take Oregon big.
Oregon outplayed Stanford. I know that was at home, but Justin Herbert looks unbelievable.
Absolutely. And I think Oregon big. I think that, like the point I made about Cal, is they rely on their defense, but I think if Oregon, coming off of that loss and then playing a good team again, I think they can really shine. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Cal can keep up scoring with Oregon, so I think they're gonna have to force a turnover. I don't see that happening enough for them to win, so I'm going with the Ducks.
Okay.
Interesting matchup in the SEC. You have Florida, who is now coached by Dan Mullen, going back to cowbell ringing Mississippi State. Are they gonna greet them?
At first, no, but I honestly think that they will greet him.
I think he's getting hell.
I don't see. He did. Yes, he went to Florida. this past offseason and already going back to Mississippi State for Florida to travel there. The hostility is there for the fan base, but I just don't see why. And if you know Dan Mullen and all, he coached Tim Tebow at Florida as an offensive coordinator back in those years when they were rattling off those 2 national championships. And it was very obvious that's his all-time job. That's his dream job. And it was very obvious when he got to Florida.
I'm not that high on Felipe Franks talent-wise. I think Dan Mullen gets the best out of his quarterbacks. I think Felipe Franks is getting coached by the right guy to elevate him.
Mm-hmm.
But not to win in Starkville.
Right. Going off of that, one article I did see was the title was, is it going to be Dan Mullen's new quote-unquote magical offense at Florida? Not that it's magical yet, but what he's trying to do versus the defense that he really built at Mississippi State that is there this year. So he built that defense. So in a lot of ways that these teams kind of will know what's going to happen before this game. They kind of see, Dan Mullen's going to have the insight, but Dan Mullen's return after only a few months, I think he goes in there and gets the W.
You got Florida?
Yeah.
I'm going to pick Mississippi State. I think they're on the defensive side of the ball. I think they play a lot better this week than they did at Kentucky. They let Kentucky's quarterback have some time, and he's fast. He can escape the pocket. Felipe Franks will not do that by choice like the Kentucky quarterback did. I'm choosing Mississippi State. I think they play a lot better. I think they're going to play energized to beat Dan Mullen in his return. Like I said, I think the fans are going to give him hell. What he did there, magical. They're going to love him forever for that. But they don't like that he left.
No,
they don't care that it's his dream job at Florida.
Right, and it's within the conference too. It's not like he went across country.
Yeah, so I'm going with Mississippi State in this one. You have Florida. To another SEC matchup, South Carolina is going to number 17 Kentucky. We touched on Kentucky in their big season so far, their big win last week against Mississippi State. This is an interesting matchup.
South Carolina's offense is, I wouldn't say as good as advertised. They have Deebo Samuel, who has 6 straight touchdowns, or a touchdown in 6 straight games.
He can do everything.
He can do everything.
He's like a Farrah Cooper, what they just had.
Absolutely. But Kentucky does have a lot of athletes. They do rely a lot on Benny Snell, like you mentioned. But they have been winning these games. They did go down to Florida and win, but they did beat Mississippi State at home.
Mm-hmm. So they're home for this one.
This is another big home game. That crowd is actually nuts. No one talks about it. Kroger Field can get nuts. But they are ranked 17. South Carolina coming to town. I'll take Kentucky. I'll take them by a touchdown.
All right, I'm going to disagree. I think Will Muschamp gets this done. I think Will Muschamp is going to have a game plan to stop Benny Snell. I think he's also going to have a spy on most plays to keep Wilson in the pocket and force him to throw the ball. Will Muschamp he's not a good defense. I know he's a head coach. He's not a good defensive coordinator. He's exceptional.
Oh, absolutely.
He can game plan. He will do the game plan for this defense with his defensive coordinator. I think they shut Kentucky down. Not for the whole game, but I think Benny Snell struggles a little more than he did against Mississippi State. I'm going with the Gamecocks for a big win on the road for Will Muschamp.
Okay. Bold. Not too bold, but bold.
The last game on schedule that we're going to talk about is number 20, BYU. They are going at number 11, Washington. This is going to be an interesting game. BYU can force some turnovers. They can score a little bit. Their offense is a little unconventional. I'm going with the Huskies, not only because they're home. I think Chris Peterson is going to have a great game plan this week
about to say
to get them back on track offensively.
I think Chris Peterson's a great coach. I don't think they're going to stop anything here. It's a ranked opponent coming into town, but I think it's just another game for Washington. They go in there, do what they need to do, get the W, and move on.
Yeah. Washington's really talented. They haven't played their best football yet.
Exactly.
I think they will this week. I think this is when they get on track. They're at home. I expect a Washington win, not big. 14 or, around 14, 17, I'd say.
Right. Okay. So, Washington.
Washington.
All right, so let's move on to another small story, a little idea that I had. I don't know if you've noticed, but these basketball schools, these blue bloods, these other teams, starting to show up in these college football rankings. A stat that I found is that Kentucky, Syracuse, and Duke are combined 12-0 this year. Incredible.
In football.
In football. This is not basketball yet. This is September. This is football. Another stat that I saw was this is the first time Duke and Kentucky have been ranked in the same AP poll for football since September of 1957.
Were you alive?
I was not alive. Actually, that was 40 years before I was alive.
I think
During that-
well, keep going.
During that span, they've been ranked in the same basketball AP poll 547 times.
That's insane.
Insane. So these basketball schools, quote unquote, are showing up on the football field and getting stuff done. I mean, they're 12-0 combined.
Yeah, that's impressive. We'll, as the weeks go on, as college football goes on, conference play, we'll see if they can, withhold that.
Oh, absolutely.
Sustain that.
Duke and Syracuse being in the ACC.
Well, Syracuse plays Clemson this
Exactly,
week.
so that's ending. Kentucky is in the SEC. They have Georgia soon. Assuming they win this weekend like I predicted. But I'm going to take a very bold claim here and say that these teams will not be combined undefeated by the end of the year.
By the end of the week.
By the end of the week.
I don't think either of us see Syracuse hanging with Clemson.
Not even close, like we said.
And then I have South
Would you say that was
Carolina.
a 25-point line?
25.5.
Right, so.
We talked about the big storylines. Kelly Bryant being one of them. Oklahoma's fate. Kentucky's success.
All these new coaches.
All these new coaches. It's going to be a very interesting week. Week 5 in college football. A lot of big matchups like we talked about.
So many big matchups. This week is filled
undefeated teams are going against each other.
Right, we picked 11 games, and of those 11 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are ranked matchups.
Yeah, it's a good week, and it's only going to get better, going forward as the college football season always does. It's in a great state right now. I'm looking forward to week 5.
Absolutely, we're getting into the meat of it. The conference play is really getting into it, and we're going to see what these teams are really about. I'm excited to get this going. I'm excited to see what this week brings, and we'll see how these picks ended up.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 2, week 5 of Saturdays over Sunday. Folks, have an unbelievable Saturday. Enjoy college football. Have a beer. Enjoy it. That's it from us.